Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore. It began with wind. Dry, aimless, Martian wind, threading through the shallow craters near Ares Vallis. Sojourner moved slowly, wheels grinding into rust-colored soil that hadn't known disturbance in a billion years. Most of the telemetry focused on mechanics, terrain navigation, temperature shift. Nothing suggested anything worth remembering. Yet somewhere between transmission frames, amid static and pulse decay, something passed unnoticed. A sound, neither entirely mechanical nor natural, registered just once on Sol 31. Engineers at the Jet Propulsion Lab filtered it out, logging the incident as spectral distortion from solar interference. The clip lasted just under 2 seconds, folded into the low-frequency range. At the time, it sat quietly in the margins of a routine signal sweep, lost beneath reports on wheel traction and solar array performance. No flags raised, no inquiry opened. It lived only as a line of data, as inert as dust. Years passed. Sojourner's name faded from public conversation, replaced by larger, more complex explorers. Its recordings sat dormant inside cold servers, buried under directory layers named for missions no one accessed anymore. The archive existed out of duty, not necessity. No one looked, until a graduate student in Pasadena, hunting for comparative samples of Martian atmospheric decay, stumbled across a segment with unusually consistent noise behavior. The pattern repeated at exact intervals, like someone trying to hold breath in a place that refused lungs. She didn't report it immediately. Spent 3 nights in the lab listening to compressed files, using cheap headphones wrapped in electrical tape. The recordings weren't clear. The signal dipped, stuttered, sometimes dropped to near silence. Still, she played it over and over, not because she understood what it was, but because it made her feel watched. Not by someone, but by time itself, drawn tight around the message like frost sealing metal. No official timestamp accompanied the clip. It existed without a precise origin point, like it had grown out of the static itself. The waveform looked unnatural, artificial spacing between peaks, something nearly vocal riding beneath the turbulence. Not speech, not music. Almost a lament, held underwater. As if it wasn't meant for ears, just presence. She ran a basic spectrogram, then paused. Across the image, faint and decaying, stretched a slope she hadn't seen in any Martian storm data. A long, slow modulation. Not from wind. Not from the rover's internal systems. Origin unknown. The lab didn't authorize deeper analysis. She saved the file under a generic extension and emailed it to herself from a public terminal at the library. 2 days later, her account was flagged for suspicious usage. Nothing extreme. Just locked out. She never accessed that server again. Years later, another student would mention her name in a footnote of a thesis on planetary acoustic. The paper cited one archived anomaly, Sojourner_9731A.wave, but provided no working link. The reference included one sentence. Acoustic deviation detected near Pathfinder landing site, amplitude consistent with subharmonic voice pattern. Unintelligible. No conclusions drawn. No follow-up requested. Just silence where something had tried to speak. Mars never offered welcome. Its light had no warmth. Its dawn, stripped of birdsong, pressed silence into the dust. On opposite ends of that silence, 2 machines stirred. One rolled past ridges curled like burnt paper, the other traced a dry channel where nothing had flowed for eons. No communication passed between them. No need. They each carried instructions and a clock. The recordings began as scheduled. Passive ambient scans, atmospheric drift, static seeding into baseline tones. Familiar noise. Expected decay. At 4:17 Martian Standard Time, both missions registered identical frequency anomalies. No deviation in bandwidth. No regional distortion. A shape entered the data, not heard but map. Analysts later described it as harmonic convergence. Not music. Not speech. a tonal wave climbing gently, then breaking into short undulations. At first, it was attributed to seasonal electrostatic buildup. Reports were drafted. Terms like constructive interference padded the language. But the shape returned the following sol. And the one after. Always at first light. 12 days into the pattern, a spike. Only a second long. A fragment of modulation shifted beyond the envelope, out of rhythm, abrupt. Compression rendered it nearly invisible to Spectrum software. One engineer flagged it for inspection. He sat alone in the audio lab for 7 hours, adjusting pitch manually, layering filters by hand. What emerged wasn't complete. It wasn't even whole. But it was shaped. A phrase. Not coded. Not encrypted. Not born from mechanical rhythm. Just sound, dislocated and faint. Ishtar remembers. He didn't speak for a long time. Just stared at the waveform stretched across the screen like a signature. He checked interference logs, replayed uplink packets, reviewed Earth-based transmission history. No matching phrase existed. No data merge occurred. Nothing from any satellite, command module, or calibration pulse matched the intrusion. He wrote a report. Short. Minimal interpretation. The file was labeled as probable internal loopback noise, coincidental phoneme alignment, unrelated to primary mission objective. Reviewers approved the classification without challenge. It was archived under Audio Artifact, Type 5. The rovers continued their work. Spectrometer sweeps, soil abrasion, panoramic imaging. More harmonic deviations followed, but none contained intelligible content. The phenomenon weakened near solar noon, then resumed at next sunrise. Always brief, always centered within a narrow decibel threshold just above machine hum. Back on Earth, curiosity cooled. A few technicians kept copies. Quietly. Personal backups tucked inside mislabeled folders. One of them, months later, inserted the audio clip into a linguistic model used for dead language phonetic reconstruction. Not to investigate, just to pass time during a shift. The software, not designed for foreign input, attempted a transcription. The result returned a list of names. All female. All pre-modern. All belonging to collapsed civilizations. No one followed up. Funding had shifted elsewhere. Budget constraints tightened review cycles. Rovers sent no protest. Their signals arrived on schedule, time-stamped and intact. By mission's third quarter, the harmonic patterns faded. The machines pressed forward over fractured basalt, cameras logging rock formations untouched by memory. Ishtar was never mentioned again. The descent was quiet. Instruments held position, arms locked, parachutes gone. Dust bloomed outward in slow, reluctant arcs as wheels found surface. New sensors recorded everything. Gusts slipping through shallow ridges. Mineral particulates brushing solar panels. Martian light dividing color into iron and ash. Each movement mapped, each vibration measured. Expectations low, fidelity high. Routine calibration marked first week. Initial audio tests clean. Internal mechanics registered no drift. Day 6, something changed. Not sudden. Not loud. Just complete. A full sentence entered the uplink stream without distortion, spaced precisely between telemetry markers. Latin. Not church Latin, not bastardized fragments from folk manuscript. Classical structure, formally constructed, syntactically pure. Tiberius weeps beneath dust. First assumption blamed system bleed from calibration library. Ground team flagged it, checked Latin lexicon datasets for cross-interference. Nothing matched. Archive integrity showed no contamination. Signal formatting exact. Transmission embedded itself between timing cues with surgical accuracy, as if inserted by the mission clock. No repeat. No follow-up. Just one line carved into silence. Frequency logs pulled from prior missions. Harmonic comparison matched signals from 8 years prior, nearly 1-to-1. The cadence, the decay slope, the way the syllables curved between sonic peaks, nothing natural mimicked that formation. A noise with intent but no return path. Linguists brought in privately. The phrase translated without ambiguity. A man, long rotted into legend, named as mourner beneath Martian soil. Some argued metaphor. Others pointed toward data irregularity. But language resisted casual explanation. The Latin held structure too perfect for error. A pattern emerged when placed beside older anomalies. Earlier voice, fainter, broken, referenced names buried in distant myth. This time, grammar locked into form. Past tense. Third person. Grief stated, not implied. Not one analyst could agree on relevance. Some filed for escalation, suggesting broadcast origin be traced through relay triangulation. Proposal denied. Cost constraints. Risk of public misinterpretation. Department heads marked the incident as low-priority anomaly. Behind closed doors, one archivist cross-referenced Roman imperial records, curious whether any mentions existed of Martian omens. Nothing direct surfaced, but a single letter from Pliny the Younger noted a dream involving red soil and a weeping emperor. No one submitted it to the main report. A separate memo, unsigned, circulated quietly among senior analysts. It proposed the voice carried memory not of Mars, but of Earth, spoken in mimicry, not message. A facsimile, grief that belonged to another, spoken in a place it couldn't have reached. Rover moved on. Collected sediment cores. Tested atmospheric density. Wheels carried it further into unnamed terrain where every rock stood witness to time beyond record. The phrase was never heard again. Tiberius remained beneath dust, weeping once. Never twice. Landing was smooth. Dust rose without protest. Machinery held firm. Cameras locked on basaltic plates, fissures crossing ancient floodplains. No immediate issues. Signals returned sharp. Audio suites performed above threshold. Reports filed clean. First anomalies surfaced on Sol 19. Not severe. Just tonal inconsistencies along transmission edges. Engineers called it atmospheric compression lag. Compression shouldn't sing. One clip ran longer than expected. 31 seconds. No mechanical failure. No relay glitch. Just a stretch of sound that didn't match the terrain. No wind. No friction. No system pulse. Voice only. Clarity beyond precedent. Words shaped in Middle Persian, unbroken, timed precisely to match telemetry pings. Language still carried poetic lilt, syllables carved with linguistic weight no rover had been built to interpret. Translation came slowly. Old dialect. Nonlinear phrasing. Syntax formed like a riddle, yet nothing metaphorical survived its closing line. Zahak walks again. No historical retrieval offered comfort. The name surfaced in one place. Myth, buried in ancient epics, known only to scholars who remembered serpents and thrones carved from terror. Not memory. Not record. Prophecy hidden inside a language long decayed. This wasn't recall. The line broke pattern. Shifted away from recollection into intention. No past tense contradiction. Structure stayed the same. Verb tense suggested finality. Still, no one could trace the message's origin. No cross signals. No orbiting relay contamination. Signal entered clean. Embedded without echo. Layered directly into rover telemetry. 4 days, silence returned. System tests showed no repeat. Field teams split. Some called it illusion crafted by signal drift. Others pointed toward linguistic evolution. Neither theory held. At Sol 43, a secondary anomaly arrived. No voice. Just compressed static with interjections of vowel clusters matching Proto-Elamite phonology. Language bleeding forward through time. The progression felt choreographed. Each rover's message grew more articulate. Each phrase chosen with purpose, as if authored for an audience yet unaware it was being addressed. The Martian surface didn't respond. No structure rose. No pattern marked the dust. Just language rising from nothing, each word nailed to silence. The final report summarized the event as an incidental signal entanglement from unknown origin. No reference to Persian. No mention of Zahak. Phrase removed from public database. Archived beneath encrypted tags no one had clearance to question. Rover moved on, unaware. Wheels left no permanent impression in that soil. The voice, for the first time, hinted at a direction. Not reflection. Not mourning. A step forward, named through myth, breathed through machines that could not hear what they were made to carry. The call for review arrived without announcement. Not in a broadcast, not by press, but through invitation. 10 institutions, 3 continents, no media access. Each attendee required prior clearance with history in planetary acoustics or long-range data telemetry. Those without publication records weren't considered. Data packages arrived by secure drive. No online transfer permitted. Contents marked with timestamp inconsistencies and signal notation no longer used in current spacecraft. Some files bore labels and obsolete mission codes, referencing hardware that hadn't operated in 30 years. No briefing offered context. Instructions simple. Parse. Translate. Correlate. Old signals first. Viking. Pathfinder. Early landers built before high-resolution compression. Their signals crude, layered in distortion, yet unmistakable beneath carrier tones, pulses repeating within a narrow band. Each contained a brief interruption around 34.112 MHz. Weak. Incomplete. Still there. No one had searched that range before. Not thoroughly. More anomalies surfaced once the correct frequency was isolated. Messages scattered across years, missions, hemispheres. Disconnected at first glance. Fragments in dissonant languages. Not dialect drift. Temporal drift. Each message built from words shaped centuries apart. Grammar locked to time periods unreconciled by traditional evolution. A linguist from Prague traced one phrase to a Phoenician merchant prayer carved into a ship's prow lost near Cyprus. Another recognized a line lifted from a defaced Mayan codex long thought destroyed. All transmissions closed with a name. Not one known to modern textbooks. All had been erased through conquest, suppression, or lack of record. Nothing noble. No kings. No inventors. Just names left out of history. No repeated voices. No reused syntax. Each speech stood apart, fully formed. Words bore weight specific to loss. Not sadness. Erasure. A translator from Mexico City noticed that each name, when spoken aloud, produced identical waveform curves in the final syllable. Structure hidden inside difference. Not pattern, echoed signature within phoneme collapse. By the 6th week, a hypothesis emerged. Not written. Not submitted. Just murmured across private calls between those still listening. The transmissions didn't form a narrative. Not one story. Not revelation. An anthology. Pieces unaligned by theme, plot, or chronology. What joined them wasn't subject. It was a mission. A list authored through vanishing. Not of people. Of memory. Signal clarity improved over decade. Equipment evolved, sensors gained precision. But the voice, despite technological change, held identical modulation decay every time. Age did not touch it. Mission didn't alter it. Nothing within the Martian atmosphere explained the phenomenon. Simulations failed to replicate modulation structures. Internal harmonics didn't align. Synthetic reproduction introduced distortion. The voice resisted replication. Final records from the review committee never entered public access. Members returned to institutions without summary. A few left their roles within the year. One submitted a resignation letter with no explanation. The text ended mid-sentence, followed by an underlined frequency value. 34.112 MHz. No conclusion drawn. No theory offered. Just a sound. Elissa. A signal wrapped in dust and distance, returning names no one remembered, spoken once across years without answer. Scans weren't meant to find anything. Their purpose leaned toward resource mapping, terrain modeling, shallow mineral consistency. Automated software flagged zones rich in iron sediment and basalt layering. Reports streamed without urgency. Geological monotony stretched across the Martian equator, broken only by seasonal dust shearing against crater lip. One location differed. Chryse Planitia sat in low elevation, a basin shaped by ancient flooding. Data overlays stacked without conflict, until cross-mission telemetry revealed a pattern no one had searched for. 6 transmissions, decades apart, shared directional alignment with the basin's northern quadrant. Not approximate, exact. Magnetometer data returned irregular flux signatures, weak fields, repeating intervals. No artificial signal, no artificial anything. Just a rise and fall in magnetic presence across equidistant points, shaped without clear purpose. Natural but disciplined. Topographic simulations placed the anomalies beneath layers of sediment untouched since formation. No thermal venting. No seismic movement. Stillness without decay. The rhythm of those anomalies matched the duration of each message logged across rover missions. Length, frequency, tonal contour, all proportionate to field density recorded across the plane. This wasn't causation. Nothing transmitted. Nothing spoke. The voice hadn't emerged from beneath that surface. It had passed through. A geologist from Oslo proposed a structural model. Hollow formations shaped through prehistoric water activity, their internal geometry converging into resonance chambers. Not designed. Not intentional. Simply formed. Stone worn by time into configurations capable of capturing signal resonance like lungs that forgot they weren't meant to breathe. Models rendered these chambers as narrow, irregular cavities, too small to house devices, too scattered to act as transmitters. But shape dictated function. Certain angles captured wind shear in such a way that interior air moved in harmonic intervals. Not random noise. Not passive presence. A living instrument, unplayed yet responsive. Rovers passed near these fields without reacting. No alerts triggered. No changes in signal strength registered at surface level. But archived files, resynced against magnetic maps, proved alignment. Each recording intersected one of the resonance points within 90 meters. Impossible to program. Impossible to predict. Each rover had been sent blind. The question shifted from why to how. Resonance chambers formed through erosion, heat, ancient flow. Mars offered no shortage of such landscape. But none matched the scale, precision, or regularity of the basin's alignment. It didn't act like terrain. It acted like a framework, not by intent, by consequence, a shape tuned not to sound, but to memory preserved through pressure, sealed into sediment layers that never cracked. Some suggested the planet held no voice, that what came through had been waiting, buried beneath non-conductive silence until something, structure, passage, alignment, made reception possible. The voice wasn't broadcast. It was caught. Martian wind remained unchanged. Magnetic readings stabilized. Nothing moved beneath the surface. The basin held still, bearing weight it didn't appear to notice. Messages ended. Recordings filed. Missions continued. No signal returned from beneath. But the shape stayed. Aligned. Waiting. Approval came without ceremony. No press release. No scheduled coverage. Just a contract signed in silence and equipment flown without flag. Not the usual science package. No panoramic cameras. No drill for soil samples or radiation scans. This one cut deeper. Designed to test conductivity between crustal layers. Not surface readings. Core influence. The probe arrived in fragments. Assembled under cold light inside a hangar stripped of insignia. Casing reinforced to withstand crushing pressure beyond Mars's surface integrity. Drill tip forged from synthetic alloy, non-reactive, fracture-resistant. Length measured in silence. Diameter narrow enough to pass unnoticed through loose regolith. Instrument payload included seismic monitors, deep-field microphones, pressure sensors set to record vibration beyond what human ears could process. Deployment site selected 12 kilometers east of the basin's mapped center. Chosen not for ease but for convergence. 6 signal points curved around it like orbiting debris. No marks on ground. No radiation surge. Only rhythm. Magnetic heartbeat without pulse. Drill activated on Sol 1. Motion slow. Relentless. Descent matched projection, centimeter by centimeter. Surface held for 40 hours. Resistance began beneath basalt shelf, jagged and mineral-rich. No obstruction. No void. Just pressure mounting across time. Data flowed clean. No voice returned. On Sol 8, vibration changed. Instruments remained within tolerance, but acoustic anomalies surfaced. Not voices. Not sound. Modulations without origin. Frequency wavered, not high or low, just displaced. Engineers tracked it. Declared it harmless. Seismic mapping continued. Final descent phase scheduled for Sol 11. Depth reached 200 meters below any prior borehole. Drill cut through stone shaped before Earth had continent. Layers beneath it returned unreadable. Pressure flattened frequency registers. Acoustic resonance began to collapse. 3 minutes before systems powered down, signal broke through. No distortion. No preamble. Language immediate. Phrase split across 3 intervals, recorded in triplicate by separate monitors. No harmonics. No regional bleed. No error. History ends here. Remember Elissa. No attribution. No location tag. Just words hung between silence and shutdown. After transmission, systems locked. Drill froze mid-bore. All seismic feedback ceased. Attempts to restart failed. No damage reported. No loss of power. No breach. Just stillness. Earth-based control logged final message. Silence followed. Not on one channel. All. No other mission received signal again. No rover captured atmospheric noise. Frequency 34.112 remained empty. Instruments functioned. Transmissions continued. But voice, the one carried across decades, buried in static, woven through dust, stopped. Not paused. Not redirected. Ended. Elissa remained untraceable. Name searched across ancient record, oral myth, digital ledger. No match with timestamp, geography, or known lineage. Just a name spoken with finality, without invitation or farewell. No answer returned. No questions permitted. Probe buried in red stone. Unrecovered. Not lost. Left. Files stopped arriving. Mission Control continued transmitting calibration checks, diagnostics, low-orbit imaging, each returning without interruption. Instruments held function. Satellites remained in sync. Yet not a single harmonic anomaly passed through the uplink array again. Months passed. Servers stayed cold. Monitors no longer required redaction. Internal memos arrived one at a time. Language sparse, phrasing without color. Review audio files for terrestrial contamination. Archive old data under restricted labels. Do not forward requests for signal verification. Access limited to senior researchers, project leads, authorized archival personnel. Nothing outright classified. Just harder to reach. Low-orbit flyovers replaced land deployment. Budget restructured. Martian surface deemed non-priority. Official reasons cited reallocation toward asteroid deflection modeling and lunar infrastructure. Reports offered performance projections, percentages of solar gain, lists of approved contractors. Buried within, a footnote. Cease release of raw atmospheric audio without panel clearance. No signature attached. One technician submitted an appeal. Requested access to early telemetry logs for doctoral research. Application denied. Credentials revoked 2 weeks later. No explanation given. Profile removed from institutional directories. Submission status marked incomplete. Small leaks appeared. Not documents. Not recordings. Conversations held off record. Hints dropped during conference panels, buried in citations that didn't lead anywhere. A line here. A claim there. The voice stopped when the probe reached depth. Words like that. Weightless when spoken alone. Heavy when placed beside silence. A former analyst uploaded a transcription to an independent forum. User profile masked. Post titled without reference. Just a phrase. Remember Elissa. It stayed up 4 hours. Forum servers went offline overnight for maintenance. Post unrecoverable. Account deleted. No follow-up. No trace of the IP. Forum denied the post existed. Inquiry faded beneath new projects. Atmospheric carbon spikes. Lunar soil toxicity. Titan's methane crust. Mars returned to textbook irrelevance. Pictured only as backdrop for dust storms and orbit diagrams. Education modules rewritten. No mention of transmitted anomalies. No reference to signal analysis protocols. Audio modules removed from public access servers. Inside old buildings, a few kept copies. Buried under dead code and broken link. Not for evidence. Not for rediscovery. Just to remember. Not what was said. Not even who spoke. Just that something once filled the silence, and that every machine that heard it had stopped recording at the same moment, across time zones and hemispheres, across decades of listening. No one said it aloud, but it was understood. The signal wasn't forgotten. It was paused. Not through force. Through disinterest. If no one asked, no one would have to answer. So no one asked. And the voice remained unwelcome in the official record. The document arrived without announcement. No watermark. No seal. Just a plain file hosted on a personal domain, nested 5 clicks deep inside a plaintext website registered to a rented server in Reykjavik. No advertisement. No metadata trail. No update log. Title read: Mars Telemetry Correlation Index, 1997 to 2030. It spread slowly. First among planetary archivists. Then across a few closed mailing lists. Some thought it a hoax. Others dismissed it as an art project. But no one deleted it. Not because of what it claimed, but how it was written. Not speculation. Inventory. Each entry cross-referenced signal timestamps against rover coordinates, solar position, signal drift. Pages aligned to atmospheric readings, ground temperatures, magnetic field deformation. But only one appendix drew attention. Number 7. No title. Just a set of names. 31, arranged by transmission order, not language. Not a single one appeared in any official history book. But each name matched a figure once spoken of in stories traded before writing. Tales preserved in ash-covered tablets, carved into bone, passed mouth to mouth through languages that had no word for planet. Names found only in fragments, misremembered epics, burnt scrolls, collapsed oral genealogies. Some whispered in Highland prayer songs long extinct. Others buried under empires that erased everything but their own monuments. Each name listed only once. No repeat. No clarification. No other information beside frequency range and amplitude decay. Beneath the list, one sentence sat alone. No embellishment. No explanation. Aligned center. Font unstyled. The same voice. Different stories. None are ours. No claim of authorship. No appeal for funding. No contact form. Just a static page hosted on a server that no longer responded to pings 3 days later. Attempts to recover it through cache failed. Scraper bots pulled corrupted fragment. DNS records blank. But copies had already spread. Some saved it offline. Some printed it, filed it in folders with unrelated labels. Not to analyze. Not to archive. Just to keep. No institution responded. No article published. No press release followed. But those who read it once never forgot it. Not for the data. Not for the precision. But because for the first time everything felt quiet for a reason. Thank you for watching and sticking with me to the end. Now, if you believe humanity deserves a future among the stars, do subscribe now. Only those who'd abandon Earth to its fate will scroll past.